Now for some fun with the auto industry here. Next sketch we're gonna do is a side view of a 32 Ford, 5-window, same body configuration we just drew, but now we're gonna draw a hot rod version of this. Now what's a hot rod? Basically a hot rod's a highly personalized vehicle. And just picture this, it's 1932, your parents have just brought home, or your father just brought home a brand new 32 Ford. You're 16 years old, want to get your driver's license. You're not driving this car. This is a brand new family car, okay? What you're going to get is remember this, the Model T. So in 1932, if you as a young man or young lady wanted to drive a vehicle, you had to get a used car. You probably got a Model T, but they're kind of funky. They're kind of like, you know, grandpa's old car, but you want to start doing things to like modify it, maybe cut the windshield down a little bit, maybe take the back off, maybe make it into a convertible. You're going to start modifying this to give it your personality, okay? But the Model T was still very limited. Not a lot of parts for engines and things like that. So in the 30s, 1930s, hot rodding was still sort of a very beginning phase of youth personalizing a vehicle. So by the time we get to the 1940s, before World War II, again, this car becomes an older car. It's probably 6 to 8 years old. And maybe with a part-time job, you could probably afford one of these. So the idea becomes, you can actually start modifying this. But again, before the war, 1940s, 42, this still hasn't taken off yet. There still is not the engine kind of technology as far as modifying engines, increasing horsepower. It's not until after World War II, in the late 1940s, 46, 47, 48, that this becomes a desirable car for a hot rod, okay? By that time, you know, mom and dad have moved off to brand new 1945 type cars. Weren't many cars actually made during the war, but let's say by 1950, this is an old car. You get this in a junkyard and you want to personalize it. So you basically cut the top down. You're able to find engine parts. After World War II, there was a lot of manufacturers of engines, headers, new heads, race car parts. You're seeing the fledgling of a lot of different racing organizations, drag racing, NASCAR. It takes off after World War II. A lot of these servicemen who come back from the war are looking for, you know, some greater thrills in life, and the whole car industry, modification industry, accessory industry just sort of takes off. So what happens? We've got this now, this culture of personalizing a vehicle, making something personal for you, you know, for something you would want, very different from anybody else. And so we start doing fabrication work, and people start doing these kind of cars. So let's go ahead and draw a hot rod, okay? We can do a side view. We got 3 wheels apart. But now we've dumped it, as they say. We got this thing down on the ground, okay? So we have very little ground clearance now. And if you notice, there's sort of a wedge shape to it. All the other cars we did were sort of, you know, they sort of straight line, sort of boxes, straight, okay? This, we're gonna get what's called wedge. We're gonna actually bend, we're actually gonna make the front end curve down like this, okay? Here's our back tire. Sometimes the back tire was larger than the front tire, just so we had this sense of motion. And this idea of this is called a wedge. Smaller tire in the front. Get our center axles, okay? We've got the bottom of the car down here. Still have the cowl, but we threw away the engine cover. We've got the deck, but we've cut probably the door section off. We've got the hood here. Got that iconic soft shape that you see on a 32. Here's our 5-window, 2 on the side. But we've really cut it down. Okay. No more fenders. You know, Dad and Grandpa had the fenders on. We don't need fenders. So this becomes sort of that rebellious part of youth taking over the car industry, you know. No more spokes. We're going to cover everything up with this nice cover. Sometimes they're called moon covers. because we don't want to show off, you know, the old guy stuff. We're going to try and make this new, personalize it to our taste. We may go drag racing, hang out with our friends. Now the engine is interesting. This is what happens now when you're starting to draw stuff. You got to understand an engine. This is the head of the engine. You got 4 cylinders on this side. It's a V8. And the exhaust back here. And of course we've taken the muffler off because we're young and we want to make a lot of noise. So no mufflers. Just this loud, obnoxious, crazy looking car that drove our parents crazy, because that's what youth does, is we're about driving the people around us crazy with our personality and our rebellious nature. So these cars, there's the oil pan sits down here, barely off the ground. Here's our ground line. This is a manifold configuration. Got probably looks like 2 carburetors up here. We'll just put 2 little boxes and maybe a little air cleaner. I'm not quite digging that. I'm gonna make a little scoop. I always like scoops on my air cleaners. There's like a little, just this stuff's an air cleaner here, and there's the cowl. And we've just cut that section right out of the middle of that car. Brought the glass down, maybe threw the glass away, cut the glass down. Really just made this thing a really kind of a neat, low profile looking vehicle. So cars by this time now, after World War II, like I said, you start seeing this rebellious nature in automobiles. Youth market is starting to take off. And it was based off taking these older cars and modifying them to some kind of new taste, new proportions. They're faster. And they were based off old stuff. So when you built your hot rod in 1950, you had a 32. You could go to a junkyard or dealership and get a 1932 Ford for hundreds of dollars. Because who would want what family would want an old 20, 15-year-old car? No, your family, people wanted new things. So you let your parents buy the new thing, you went out and bought the old thing, and you and your buddies fixed it up. Didn't mean about the girls there, but girls got much more involved in auto racing a little bit later. Reflection down the side. The other tire on this side, just a little bit. And there we go. Again, we got that, this whole thing is leaning down this way. That's our wedge shape. And a little more radical. A little more details in here. Yeah, there's our engine. Very good. So, hope you enjoyed making a hot rod. And by this time in the auto culture, accessory market's taking off. A lot of energy and performance. Okay, there we go. Now to the next project.